Right now, things are a little bit strange, contested even. History, truth, free speech, even reality itself. What gets remembered, what gets erased, who gets to tell the story? That's why art matters. Art captures what it feels like to be alive in a moment. And in that moment, things are unfolding. And art is what holds it there, those moments. It's how we as humans mark time with perspective and a point of view that refuses to be flattened or rewritten. Because long after we're gone, those moments remain captured in art. Because if art is how we hold a moment, people like Rasmus are figuring out how to move it. He's based in Copenhagen, and he founded the Creative Business Network as a kind of bridge that connects artists, founders, and thinkers across borders, across disciplines, across systems, across ideology, and across religion. These relationships were never designed to meet in one place, but his work doesn't sit neatly in these categories. It moves pretty fluently between them, pushing past the usual walls that separate art from business, local from global, idea from execution. And when we sat down together, that tension between structure, expression, government, speech, and voice was right at the center of the conversation. You need to hear this. You know, this is not our first rodeo together, Rasmus. And there's so much to catch up on, you know, like, I mean, the state of the world, AI, your work at the Creative Business Network, like, where do we even start? I don't know. Let's start at the beginning. My good friend, Rasmus Tscherning, CEO, founder, all of the things for the Creative Business Network, which is the sponsor of the Creative Business Cup, right? This global Olympics for startups all over the world, right? You have single-handedly created a movement for creative entrepreneurship around the world, right? There was nothing there. You came in and you are a creative, right? Like, you're an artist. You live in Denmark, right? That helps. And you said, this is, you know, there is a story here when it comes to creativity and creative industries in entrepreneurship. So why don't we start there? Like, let's start easy, and then we're going all the way down. We're going to talk about Pussy Riot and how ahead of our time we were. But let's start, Rasmus, let's start right now. Like, the world is in turmoil, right? You know, like, things are going on, but creators keep creating, right? So let's talk about you and your idea and your vision around the Creative Business Network, right? Like, let's just lay it out, right?
Well, it was in 2012, there were so many clean tech and green tech and tech, whatnot, competitions around entrepreneurship, med tech, ed tech, and so on. And I thought we needed something to highlight those entrepreneurs that didn't necessarily, go to business school or take an engineering career, but those that maybe work more on the storytelling part and the design and the staging, the experience, or that took those skills from the creative skills and created great companies. And people are kind of like, well, because it seems a bit like, is this nice to have or need to have? Is this more like, movies and gaming and stuff? And on one hand, you could say, well, it's the stuff that surrounds us, and it's, the books we read, the music we listen to, it makes up who we are. It's identity building for us as individuals, and also as for us society, a community. And but it's also big business. I mean, I keep going back to it because, when I was a kid, we were driving Volvos, and Volvo was sold to the Chinese for $1.4 billion. And Peppa Pig, a small cartoon pig with a brother called, I think in Denmark he's called Gustav, I'm not sure what he's called in the US, but was sold for $4 billion. That studio was sold for more than the double of Volvo. And when we look at, so there's a lot of jobs and exports and growth happening in this space, in the creative economy. There's also a lot of creative solutions that we need to see. You were part of the Creative Business Cup jury in 2019, where we all discovered something that we hadn't thought about before, that women urinate. They actually have to sometime pee when they go to rock concerts.
I can confirm that, yeah.
Yeah, they go to rock concerts and they stand in line, and they go to sports events and they stand in line, because we haven't thought of an easy way we haven't thought of a female urinal. And in 2019, we saw La Pie come up with a solution. So it's certainly not just nice to have, it's also solutions for the world that we need.
And, you and I have kicked this can down the road for years, but when we're talking about the creative industries and companies like La Pie or Deaf Metal or all of these Roku, like all of these cool companies that have come through the Creative Business Network, we have struggled for years on how you define what that means, right? And it's changed over the years, because you've got the creators, right? And then you've got the enablers, right? The people who enable the creators to distribute and to get their messages out. So let's talk a little bit about that, especially over the last couple of years, how maybe that has changed.
It has changed. And I think we realized that, for example, you've been to Roskilde Festival, one of the world's largest.
Yeah, I saw Tears for Fears there. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was amazing. And that is not per se a creative event, but it's definitely an event in the creative economy. I mean, it has some 120,000 people per day for a week, but the CEO and the staff are not necessarily creative, but they are indeed the enablers, the people that make it happen, and that are part of the value chain or the food chain, or what we want to call it, for the creative economy. And how to define it, it is kind of like, because we always talk about, these industries are so fragmented: fashion, music, movies, gaming. But when I look at the transportation sector, I mean, the skills to fly an airplane are certainly very different from the skills to drive a train or a car or a bus, or, I mean, the transportation sector is as diverse as the creative sector. And I don't think it's valuable for anyone to try and put it too much in silos. What we like to see at Creative Business Cup is that it's not exclusively a technical solution, but on the other hand, you could also say Airbnb and so on. This is creative thinking. It's not really technological advances. It's not. I don't know if Airbnb has a lot of patents behind them. La Pie, the female urinal, has patents and an industrial design protection, etc. So it can be really difficult to define, indeed.
Yeah, it is. But, as we're sitting here at this really transactional moment in human history with AI coming on, I love AI, right? We embrace it. I know you do too. And it is also the bane of my existence, right? Because, there's so much overuse of it that it is taking the place of people's critical thinking, their ability to create, right? Original thinking, original art, right? What is your messaging at the Creative Business Network when it comes to AI?
Sure. I just went to something fantastic called Polar Bear Pitching. You should hook up with these people as well, where they ask the startups to actually pitch in ice cold water, and they have a sauna ready for them, and they have it's up in Finland, in northern Finland. And here we also had an AI advisory group meeting. And on one hand, we know what makes a movie or a book or a collection or whatever sustainable is the surprise element, the non-conformist thing. It's the It's and in many ways the AI, in the creative process, somehow tries to, not always try to summarize, what's
Yeah.
orange is now what it should be. So if you put in green instead, then it will surprise people. But up there in Finland, we talked about there are really three ways that we can look at AI. One is how it can help the creatives focus on the creative part of
Exactly. It's an
their
enabling
endeavor.
technology, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can do the legal, it can do the promotional, it can do the financial stuff. It can do all the humdrum, non-creative things that creative don't really want to focus on. So they can focus on the ceramics, the game development, etc., and let the business be taken care of more and more by AI. But then there's also the part where actually you have AI introduced into the creative process, such as the post-production of a movie, when you end up with like 5,000 hours of tape that you need to somehow get into a 2-hour movie. Here, AI can help you with the script and put together a draft. You can also, if you have writer's block, you can maybe get out of that through AI. So I think there are also ways that AI can inspire the actual creative process. And then I think there's a third way that AI, which is relating to the second, is we see a lot of createch happening now, lots of, videos being made. And we kind of laugh at them when they're AI generated videos because they're kind of funny. But I think there's a lot in the space of advertising, gaming, and video production, audiovisual sector, and so where AI can really make the help for the creator to get his idea across somehow. So there are these three ways that AI can help. But of course, I was running this morning and thinking about our interview and thinking about, how well these American actors were copied by AI. And, maybe one day they will be able to act better. I don't know. I know that, you put Nicole Kidman in a movie or Tom Hanks because then people will go and see the movie because it removes the uncertainty whether the movie will be good because they're in there. But maybe the intent of the director can be more precise. I don't know, but I don't know if that's really what we want. I see it coming, but I also still see that the quirky, the unexpected, the creative, the curious, the queer, and so on will prevail because that's kind of what we enjoy and what we find,
And
nourishing
frankly, it's
somehow.
what the AI relies upon, right? We are the feeders of the machine. It does
True.
not, it is not an original thinker, right? Like like the philosophical question becomes, are we using AI or is AI using us, right? And
Indeed.
as a
Indeed.
creator, that should make you feel a little bit better, right? AI is not going to, it'll try, but I want to go back to something you said, Rasmus, about, writer's block, the blank sheet of paper, the blank canvas, the empty coding sheet, right? That no longer exists, right? None of us has a blank document, right? Writer's block is that whole thing. So my concern is the blank page used to be the most important part of my creative process, right? Because it forced me to pick a direction and commit and explore and experiment and come up with new ideas, right? So with AI, nobody has a blank sheet, right? I mean, it just does it for you. So what will replace that part of the creative the blank canvas? What replaces it? Or is it maybe I'm just being old school and old, right? I don't know.
No, but I still think, it is extremely valuable for all of us, whether we're in the middle of a creative process or not, to stop and look at the blank sheets of our lives
Yeah.
and figure out what should be on them.
Yeah. And allow your life to accept blank sheets, blank
Exactly.
canvases, right? Like we as artists and creators, we must protect that part of our craft, right? I had this thought, like I had writer's block, right? Like this is true. I had writer's block. And I was like, shit, I don't know. I have no idea where to take this. I'm like, well, you know what? AI is pretty good at that, right? And so AI pooped out all these ideas and it did help me, but they weren't mine, right? And I felt dirty, right? Like it made me feel like I was cheating, right? And so as in the creative industry, we're going to see more and more AI and we have to embrace it, right? Because it's out of the box.
Isn't it just, Amy, a more efficient way of gaining perspectives on stuff sometimes?
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm researching the link between rebelliousness and creativity, and open-mindedness and creativity, and so on.
Yeah.
How good it is for society, and it really. When using AI in the right way, it can really show me some perspective I didn't think of, like why are creatives more likely to take drugs, for example?
Yeah. It's a fair question. Yeah.
Yeah. What's happening there? What is it? Why is there more? Why is there less imposter syndrome in other sectors than in the creative sector?
I want to pause here for a second on something Rasmus said about that blank page, because I don't think we've fully processed what is going on. For the longest time, maybe in all of history, creativity started there, that blank page with nothing. That's where the tension was. And that's where the moment of decision making took place. Right? That was the moment you sat down and you had to pick a direction to go. But now you open an AI tool and it will give you 10 different directions before you've even had a thought. And, we all use it. I've used it. Rasmus uses it. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it's a relief. But sometimes I feel like I'm skipping something or like I'm cheating. What Rasmus says is a little bit cleaner and a little bit clearer than the way most people are talking about the blank page. AI isn't the one deciding what matters. It doesn't decide what's good, and it doesn't decide what stays and what leaves the mark. It simply shows you the options. You are the one that gets to choose. You still have to believe in what you're putting into the world. You still have to live with it. So the blank page didn't really disappear. It just morphed a little bit. And this is where it gets more complicated, because when you zoom in or zoom out from creativity to what's happening everywhere else, I think it'll be very interesting, for us to stay in contact and see how AI is impacting the startups in your ecosystem. And, the other thing that just like, startup, the whole Creative Business Cup event and the Creative Business Network is one of the most magical experiences of my career. It truly is. And we have talked about this before. And one of the things, I want to talk about the magic for a second, right? Because that's one thing we have as humans. We can hold on to our magic, right? AI can never duplicate that. But the way the event is set up, it's once per year, right? And startup teams from all over the world come into Copenhagen, right? And there is this sense of collaboration, right? And teamwork. And there is a spirit of humanity, right? That I have never seen at any other event around the world, hands down. You've got Israel standing next to Lebanon. You've got, Cyprus. You've got Ukraine, right? And we lost a couple of startup founders during the war, right? We did. And we have Afghanistan, right? So all of these countries are represented by startup founders, right? And it is emotional. They hold up their flags, right? There is a sense of pride about where they come from. And there is a sense of friendliness, right, among all of the teams and founders. And so, and I get emotional talking about it because in this moment in history, the model of the Creative Business Cup has never been more important, right? The lessons that shake out, right? We are at war, right? We are by the way, these moments in history always create great art, right? Music, right? All of these things. But how would you, like, if you were an advisor to global politics, right? And you as the founder of the Creative, you cannot escape politics, right? You are in it. You are in a geopolitical position, right? Because you have all these teams and it's hard. What you do is hard, right? And so, like, what is your, like, from that magic, which you can't really explain, you have to experience, right? People from, compete, like, border war. There are no borders at the Creative Business Cup. There are no borders, right? What is your advice to politicians on how to bottle that magic?
Well, first of all, I think some politicians are not very happy with the startups coming out of CBC. You mentioned Afghanistan, and you remember we had a startup called Maktab, which was focused on education for girls and young women.
Let's take a pause here, because at the moment, so Afghanistan was represented at the Creative Business Network, right? This is before the Taliban, all of this.
Exactly, before,
And Afghanistan, Kabul, to be precise, had a vibrant startup scene, right? Like, vibrant. There were founders. It was tech-centric, highly educated, right? And we had Maktab. So take it from, that part about Afghanistan blows my mind because it all fell apart, right?
It all fell apart, and it can easily fall apart. I think what politicians need to be aware of is that creatives and entrepreneurs in general, they value diversity, they value inclusivity, they value they challenge the established. I think you also were there when we had a princess from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
She weren't allowed to drive a car, but she could fly an airplane. And and I think so. I think that they can really come with some fantastic perspectives. We're actually part of a project where it's called Transatlantic Rising Stars, where we select European filmmakers, visual artists and musicians to go to the US, not to the big cities, but partly rural US to show their craft. And in this way, also open the minds of, even though I think we have very much the same mindset, Americans and Europeans, we're much closer in values than what we have seen the last year or so. In this way, I think what the creators can do and what the creative products and services do, they open minds, they give new perspectives, they make people think about themselves and who they are and what they do, and I think they can have really a strong impact on people. You remember, now we talk about Afghanistan. I think The Kite Runner, I don't know if you saw the movie or read the book, that is a piece of a creative product, I would say, that really is impactful in the way it describes what went on in Afghanistan and probably what's going on again. So I think politicians should definitely consider the creative economy, the creative entrepreneurs as a tool for growth and jobs and so on, but also for forging identity, community, and highlighting new perspectives. On Netflix, you can see a series called North of North, I believe it is. It's about indigenous Inuits from the northern Canada. It's I think it was on number 9 on the global Netflix watch. Really gives us a whole new perspective of the humor, the daily lives, and of that that region, and maybe also makes us think more about the importance of, that we need ice and we need to be careful that with global warming. I mean, the perspectives of such a series can actually open the minds in many ways and see this is really important. I mean, we can't have these communities be destroyed by global warming.
Yeah, and that's, the other thing about the whole creative business community that you have created is that, the founders, like they inspire so many emotions in me, right? But they don't shy away from the hard topics, right? Like they are all about problem solving, right? Whether it is technology, sustainability, a urinal for women, yeah. Right? Like there's just the stories that come out of the Creative Business Network are my favorite stories. And some of them are very poignant and some of them are very sad, right? Because you are in this, global environment. And, with Ukraine, I think back to, Ukraine is an incredibly creative economy, right? With a vibrant startup scene. And there were a couple of founders who came through and have lost their lives in the last couple of years because of the war with Russia. And so, you think of startup scenes in Silicon Valley, and it's not the same thing, right? Because of the global nature of your business. And so I also want to.
So I'm also a bit. I mean, what I've been a bit disheartened about is this total sellout by the Silicon Valley startups or tech companies that really seem to not consider the damage that is it 1/3 of all the girls that feel worse once they've been on Instagram. Well, that is a problem, I would say. Yeah. It's a big problem if you get instruction on how to cut yourself. So, and also that we don't have any moderation anymore of extreme opinions. And I think we cannot put aside that responsibility that when we create something, and when it grows and has impact, that we have to make sure that it doesn't become an uncontrollable monster. Yeah. So I think that is something that disappoints me, that seems like anything goes kind of. And here I feel the creatives are more sensitive maybe to what is right and wrong. I don't know if it seems like a value statement here, but they're really concerned about impact usually. And by the way, it's also tough. I mean, if you're working in fashion, lots of people are working in fashion, and there are lots of huge companies in fashion. So you really have to be strong internationally to make it in fashion. You have to stand out, and you have to work hard, and you have to beat H&M and all Zara and all those that sell a lot of cheap stuff every day. So it's also tough working in the creative sector.
I want to stay on this topic of Afghanistan for a moment. And maybe it's because I was a part of this story and I was there and I experienced it. But most people have an image of Afghanistan in their head, right? The image of the airport when Kabul fell, the chaos, the fires, people streaming out onto the tarmac. But what didn't get covered and what didn't fit into the news narrative is that before all of that, before Kabul fell to the Taliban, it had a vibrant startup ecosystem, a real one with real deal flow. Builders, founders, women working on education access. We had a startup there called Maktab. That was a company that was one of them that showed up in Copenhagen like any other team. And then after Kabul fell, the entire project disappeared almost overnight. So when Rasmus talks about responsibility, about what happens when things scale and no one is really steering anymore, it just feels different. Because the same systems that are supposed to elevate voices can bury them just as quickly. We're watching that play out right now as platforms are stepping back. Incentives to tell stories are shifting, and the loudest, sometimes most inaccurate voices are winning. And somewhere in that mix, the people actually building the meaningful things, the artists, the creators, they get a little bit harder to find. These aren't separate conversations. It's all a part of the same one. Maybe 7 years ago, when we we kind of changed the programming of Creative Business Cup, and we brought in a speaker, right? And the speaker, right, this goes back to the core of the global nature of your business. So we brought in Russian dissident Nadia Toloknaya, right? Lead singer for Pussy Riot. Absolute troublemaker, artist, and wonderful, just a loving, kind.
It was great.
Just an amazing speech. And she kicked off the event, and, it was wonderful. But then your Russian partners were throwing a tantrum somewhere in the background. But you know what? You stuck to the vision, right? We didn't cancel because she was controversial. In fact, we kept her because she was controversial, right?
Exactly.
And how, that was before all the nonsense started going down. The things that come out, and then, do you remember Hala Tomasdottir?
Who was a jury? The president of
She's
Iceland.
now the president of Iceland, right?
It's
so this is
I
not
met her
some
a
schlubby
couple of months ago, yeah.
I know, it's just, it is really an amazing thing that you have created. And again, I wish that I could put it into words or stories, but nothing captures the essence of the experience like actually participating. You know what I mean? Just the joy that comes out.
And I have to say that you, Amy, has also been a really important part of growing and positioning Creative Business Cup, because, we think small and we have the Janse law in Denmark, and you have been able to show me both the value of what we do and also not to suck up to royals and all kinds of...
Don't suck up to anyone is my philosophy.
Exactly. And I also remember that at one time you were especially excited because I wish I could take credit for it, but they were like 3 young men who outside your hotel window dropped their pants and jumped naked into the harbor of Copenhagen because it's so clean that lots of people swim in the harbor. And since we are not body shamers in Copenhagen, they had a good relationship with their own body.
No, it was the highlight of my journalistic career. It was fantastic. Everything about, the unexpected things you encounter, and you can either embrace them or, clutch your pearls. Yeah. So, I would just say, as we're wrapping this up, it is so important to me that people who are artists and creators and musicians, that they embrace this moment, right, as an opportunity to really take us to the next important moment in history. There has never been a more important time than right now to be a creative. And indeed. I stand behind that, and I stand behind you. And I believe so deeply in what your life's work has been, right? Your life's work has been creating this magic, right? And bringing a story to the world about creatives. And it's important. And it's important for people in America to understand how important the creative industries are to where we are as a culture. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much.
There's a documentary in this story. There really is. But more than that, there's a lesson. When you put people from completely different worlds in the same room and ask them to show you what they're building, something happens. It transcends borders and walls and politics. It's curiosity. It's that human exchange. It creates a movement. It's not something to overlook. Rasmus didn't cancel Pussy Riot. He could have. Nadia, who took the stage. He worked with Ukrainian founders. He worked with Russian founders. And he didn't forget about the founders who showed up from places that most people don't think about until something goes wrong. He just keeps going year after year from Copenhagen on a shoestring because he believes in art and he believes that art and creativity matter. And right now, when governments are recalibrating, the world order is changing platforms are stepping back and everything feels fragmented and unstable, the people building across borders might be the only ones still acting like the world is connected. Those are the artists and the creators. Art has always spoken for people. And the people who keep making it, especially now, are the ones worth paying attention to. Rasmus is one of them. Go look at what he's built. It matters. I'm Amy. This is Get Busy. See you next time.